removal from office of governors under Article 181. The word used is removal. The word impeachment does not appear in Article 181. But when you come to Article 150, two words are used. You can remove the deputy president first, Mr. Speaker, under 151A, under 151 is removal. To that extent, the question of removal in 151, you can use the same standards in Article 181. But B, it says, or on impeachment. There is no other provision for impeachment, and we have not undertaken impeachment in this country. For that reason, Mr. Speaker, while the wording might look similar, the principles are different. Because for removal, for example, under 151, it's a strictly legal process. You have to show and demonstrate that the deputy president has physical or mental incapacity. 2% translate to about 42 million out of the 50 million Kenyans, single judge. Mr. Speaker, allow me to address two things, then I sit, in terms of substance. One, Mr. Speaker, those utterances are admitted by the deputy president in the documents before you. The meanings of those words in their variety is known to you and is known to Kenyans. The danger in words is something we know in this country way back in 2007. In our neighboring country, Rwanda, we know what words did. I heard the lawyers of the deputy president suggest that he did not take agreements under the Kenya Kwanza coalition above the legislation of this country, above the constitution of this country. Section 13 of the NCIC Act is very clear that those utterances are unlawful, in fact criminal. Article 10 and Article 27 of the Constitution are equally clear that you cannot make such utterances. So to come and say that I uttered them because they are contained in a coalition for one particular political coalition is in ground 10 for breach of the NCIC Act, Section 13, and breach of Article 10 and 27 of the Constitution. My last point, Mr. Speaker, allegations of corruption. Mr. Speaker, this House has had the various allegations of corruptions. You had the very direct evidence of Dr. Mulwa in terms of KEMSA. You had the very direct evidence of the deputy CEO of ESCC. You had the various evidence in terms of Olive Garden, Vipingo, Outspan, and many others. But I will not go there. I will let you assess that. Produced. Why would you produce all the agreements of Kenya Kwanza and produce all sorts of other things except one page of a document that is the most important document was negated? Mr. Speaker, I want to suggest that had it been produced, we would then have demonstrated that that document is unlawful. Because in law, and I submit respectfully, once from my seat, because this is not a civil claim, a crime is a crime against the state. It is not personal to the Asset Recovery Agency. And therefore, those findings can only be set aside by positive findings of a superior court, and there's none. So the record shows that Rigathi Gachagua was convicted of corruption. And what that means, Mr. Speaker, that not only was it
Speaker and Honorable Senators, my name is George Gitonga Murugara, Member of Parliament, National Assembly, and the Chairperson of Justice and Legal Affairs, and I'm here to represent the National Assembly with my colleagues. Honorable Speaker and Senators, I'll deal with only one point which supports ground number 11 on the impeachment. And the ground 11 is insubordination and failure to actually act collectively with the other members of the cabinet and the presidency. There was an argument that was raised that some of the alleged misconduct on the part of the deputy president were actually committed when he was not the deputy president, and therefore do not apply to the proceedings before this House. Ref the life of the presidency or the deputy president, it is discovered that before you assume the office, you committed an offense that forms a ground for impeachment. This leads me to the next argument, which are the admissions that the deputy president actually made before the House. Clearly, he admitted that the issue of shareholding in Kenya was live, and he was part and parcel of it. He would not actually work with the cabinet, where he is responsible for everything that is done in the cabinet and the sub-cabinet committees brought together by the principle of collective responsibility. He would not be able to work with this parliament, which he has called a theater of the absurd. With whom would he work? This is the question you have to ask yourselves. What we have before us today is like a marriage, and I have to draw that analogy because actually the position occupied by the subject of the discussion and the motion, the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, is now untenable. He cannot hold that position. To Honorable Zamzam, who is also going to
Mheshimiwa na kuwaletea Mheshimiwa Spika Mheshimiwa Spika, kule Taita Taveta nimeona Mheshimiwa Spika akiwaambia kuwa hawana shares, na akawaambia nyinyi kama mnataka hisa mungoje 2027, manake hata rais akinambia mimi niweze kuwaletea maendeleo, namwambia kwanza subiri niangalie kwenye mfuko wangu wakiwa kama wako kwenye orodha ya kupewa maendeleo. Subiri niangalie kwenye mfuko wangu wakiwa kama wako kwenye orodha ya kupewa maendeleo. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, ifahamike kuna wakati mmoja Kenya iliingia kwenye vita sana. Mheshimiwa Spika, tuliona maiti ya kina mama, mtoto. Hatuwezi kutaka taifa hili lirudi kule tena. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, dereva hana pesa ya kupelekea mwenye gari. Kwa hiyo mimi nasema wamwache dereva apeleke abiria mpaka station ya mwisho, kisha akifika kule atajua atatafuta makanga mwingine namna gani. Mheshimiwa Spika, hatuna sisi uchungu na watu wa mlima, lakini tunachosema Deputy President, Mheshimiwa Spika, huyu ni sumu, atavuruga Kenya, ataharibu Kenya. Naomba bunge hili la Seneti, amani ya Kenya iko kwenye mikono yenu, na waomba mtoe uamuzi wa uhakika. Huyu jamaa hapendezi kabisa kuwa katika nafasi ambayo yuko ndani sasa, na waomba kwa heshima na akiwa ameweka amani na umoja wa Kenya mbele. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika.
Mr. Speaker, sir, very briefly, I will wrap up the submissions. Mr. Speaker, sir, I've agonized and reflected on the place of impeachment proceedings, not just in our country, but across the world and across other democracies. Mr. Speaker, sir, I've had occasion to look at the history, particularly of the United States of America, from the days of Andrew Johnson in 1868, Richard Nixon in 1974, Bill Clinton 1998, and Donald Trump 2019. Mr. Speaker, sir, I asked myself, what does impeachment proceedings seek to serve in a democracy? In my reflections, one of the clear conclusions is that it is a check and a balance through which the populace can then hold reads, "We, the people of Kenya, proud of our ethnic, cultural, religious diversity, and determined to live in peace and unity as one indivisible sovereign nation," and continues so on and so forth. From those words, we realize what the thinking of the Kenyan people was right from page 1 of framing of our constitution. We then went to substantive provisions. A lot has been said about Article 10 of our constitution, to the extent that it speaks to the values that as a people we want to be associated with. We have dedicated a whole chapter of our constitution to the questions around leadership and integrity. It then tells us how central the values that we hold are to each other. The issue, it is the message that it sends. And so similarly, when we talk about our leaders, we then must ask ourselves, what does one wrong word do to the fabric of our society? It is on the basis of that background that we then consider the impeachment motion that is currently before this House. My colleagues who have spoken before me have taken us through the provisions of Article 150, 1B, which then speaks to the very grounds that this House should consider in whether to impeach His Excellency, the Deputy President, or not. I wouldn't want to go into those grounds because the record before this House contains material in support of those grounds. I would urge, Mr. Speaker, sir, that now that His Excellency, the Deputy President, has had occasion to present material before this House, that this House could consider in response to the motion for impeachment. When you retire to debate, it is one way of ensuring that there are checks and Mr. Speaker, sir, as has been demonstrated through the many tons of documents that have been availed before this House, the cross-examination that has attended to the witnesses that have been before this House, and the material that has been placed by the mover, by all the parties who've had an opportunity to participate in the proceedings of this House, we have absolutely no doubt that this House is perfectly capable of making the appropriate decision in each and every of those counts. And just for emphasis, Article 150, subarticle 1B, gives us 3 grounds. We do not have to have beyond 1.